If you're listening to this while driving, doing dishes, or just trying to fall asleep, I need you to promise me one thing. Don't ever take one of those DNA tests unless you're truly prepared for whatever it might uncover. Because I did, I thought it would be entertaining. I figured I'd find out I was 23% Irish, 12% Scandinavian, maybe discover some distant cousin living in Australia. Instead, I found out the man who raised me wasn't my biological father. That discovery didn't just change my life, it destroyed 3 generations of carefully buried secrets. And the worst part? Nobody intended for me to ever know. My name isn't important because my family still doesn't speak to each other, and several people involved have asked me never to share this story publicly, so I'll leave out names and places. But every single event I'm about to tell you is true. I was 29 years old when this happened. My parents had been married for over 30 years. From the outside, they were the kind of couple everyone admired. They laughed together, took road trips every summer, never missed birthdays or holidays. If someone had asked me to describe my childhood in one word, I'd have said normal. Which is probably why what happened next felt like my entire identity was erased overnight. It started at a family barbecue. My cousin kept talking about a DNA ancestry kit she'd ordered online. She found relatives in Canada. Another cousin joked that maybe Grandpa wasn't actually Grandpa. Everyone laughed. My mom even smiled. She said, "Imagine all the family secrets those tests uncover." Looking back, that smile wasn't amusement, it was fear. I just didn't know how to recognize it. A week later, I ordered a kit, mostly out of curiosity. When it arrived, I spat into the tube, mailed it back, and completely forgot about it. 6 weeks later, I received an email. "Your DNA results are ready." I opened them during my lunch break at work. The ancestry breakdown looked interesting, but what caught my attention was another feature: DNA matches. The closest match wasn't my cousin or my aunt. It was someone listed as half-brother, estimated 26% shared DNA. I stared at the screen. Half-brother? I don't have a brother. I refreshed the page. Logged out, logged back in. Same result. His profile said he was 32 years old, 3 years older than me, living only 2 states away. My first thought was simple. The website must be wrong. Technology makes mistakes. Algorithms fail. I closed the browser and tried to ignore it, but curiosity has a way of growing louder every hour. That evening, I checked again. He had sent me a message. It read, "I've been waiting years for someone from your side of the family to take this test." My stomach dropped. Not because I understood what it meant, but because he clearly did. I didn't respond. Instead, I called customer support. They politely explained that close family matches like this are extremely accurate. Errors were incredibly rare. I remember hanging up and whispering, "What does this even mean?" That weekend, I drove to my parents' house. I didn't tell them why, I just wanted to look at them. See if maybe I'd noticed something I'd missed my entire life. My dad was outside fixing the fence. He smiled when he saw me. "Didn't expect you today." We spent an hour working together, talking about football, politics, the weather, completely ordinary things. At one point, I looked at him and thought, this is my dad. DNA can't change 30 years of memories, but questions don't disappear just because you ignore them. That night after dinner, I casually mentioned the DNA test. Mom froze for half a second. Dad laughed. "Did you find out we're Vikings?" I forced a smile. Then I said, "It matched me with a half-brother." The room went silent. Not awkward silent, terrifying silent. My dad looked confused. My mom turned pale. She stood up so quickly her chair nearly tipped over. Then she whispered, "Where did you buy that test?" That wasn't the reaction of someone who thought the test was inaccurate. That was the reaction of someone already terrified of the answer. I asked again, "Who is he?" She didn't answer. Instead, she said, "Those websites make mistakes." My dad nodded. "Exactly. but he wouldn't look me in the eyes. I left that night with more questions than answers. A few days later, the stranger messaged me again. This time he wrote, "I know this is overwhelming. I don't want money. I don't want anything from you. I just think you deserve the truth." I finally replied, "What truth?" His response arrived almost instantly. "The man who raised you isn't your biological father." I couldn't breathe. I read the sentence over and over, then I deleted the app, as if removing it from my phone could somehow erase what I'd just seen. For nearly a month I avoided everyone. Work became a blur. Sleep became impossible. Eventually I agreed to meet him. We met at a quiet coffee shop halfway between our cities. The moment he walked in, it felt like looking into an older version of myself. Same eyes, same smile, even the same habit of rubbing the back of his neck when nervous. No DNA report was needed. Anyone could have seen we were related. He handed me a folder. Inside were photographs, letters, hospital paperwork, and one faded picture of a man standing beside him when he was a little boy. I almost dropped it. The man looked exactly like me. He wasn't my father, he was my biological father. And according to my half-brother, he had died 5 years earlier without ever meeting me. The story that followed shattered everything I believed. 30 years ago, my mother had briefly dated this man. They broke up. She discovered she was pregnant shortly afterward, around the same time. She reconnected with the man I call Dad. He believed the baby was his. Or perhaps he simply chose to believe it. No paternity test was ever done. My biological father tried contacting her several times after I was born. According to the letters, she never responded. Eventually, he married someone else and had another son, my half-brother. He spent years trying to figure out whether Dad had another child somewhere. That's why he'd taken the DNA test. He wasn't searching for me. He was searching for answers. I drove straight to my parents' house. No warning, no phone call. I placed the folder on the kitchen table. Then I asked one question. How long were you planning to keep lying to me? My mom burst into tears before I even finished speaking. My dad didn't. He simply sat there, quietly. Then he said something I'll never forget. "I found out when you were 2. Everything inside me stopped. "You knew?" He nodded. A blood test during a hospital visit raised questions. He confronted Mom. She admitted everything. I asked him why he stayed. His answer still breaks my heart. "Because by then you already called me Dad." I couldn't speak. Neither could he. He wasn't my biological father, but he had changed every diaper, attended every school play, taught me to ride a bicycle, stayed awake through every fever, loved me every single day, not because he had to, because he chose to. I hugged him harder than I ever had before. Then I turned toward my mother. I wanted to understand. Instead, I learned there was one final secret. She hadn't ignored my biological father's letters. My grandmother had. Apparently, my grandparents believed the truth would ruin everyone's lives, so they intercepted every letter, every birthday card, every attempt he made to contact me. And my mother admitted she'd eventually given up trying to explain everything. The lie became easier than the truth, until DNA made lying impossible. The months that followed were chaos. My grandparents denied everything, then admitted parts of it, then blamed everyone else. Extended families split into sides. Old resentments surfaced. Marriages nearly ended. Some relatives stopped speaking altogether. One tiny saliva sample had exposed decades of deception. Today, it's been 4 years. My relationship with my mother is improving, but it will never be what it was. Trust, once broken that deeply, doesn't fully return. My grandparents both passed away without ever apologizing. I wish I could say I made peace with that. I haven't. As for my half-brother, he's become one of my closest friends. Every few months we take a road trip together. Sometimes we laugh about how weird life is. Sometimes we sit quietly, imagining the childhood we could have shared. And my dad? The man who raised me? He's still my dad. Nothing, not a DNA test, not biology, not paperwork, can change that. Because being a father isn't only about sharing genes, it's about showing up again and again and again. Looking back, I don't regret taking that DNA test. The truth hurt more than I can describe, but living inside a lie would have hurt even more if I'd discovered it 20 years later. If there's one thing this experience taught me, it's this. Secrets don't disappear with time. They grow, they spread into every generation, and eventually, someone opens an email they think will tell them where their ancestors came from, only to discover they don't even know who they are. So if your family is carrying a secret today, don't wait for technology to reveal it. Because when the truth finally comes out, people rarely remember the lie. They remember who chose to keep it alive.